Good evening.
Good evening.
And welcome to Pop Talks. And as you can see, Pop Talks has a new, young, dynamic co-presenter.
Hi, that's me, I'm Liv. I'm very, very excited to be here, not just because of Pop Talks, but because it's a very special day today. It's International Women's Day. So every year on the 8th of March, we come together to celebrate women.
We do, and this is a genuine celebration. It's a global event, isn't it? Celebrating political, cultural, social and economic achievements of women around the world.
Yeah, this evening is a genuine celebration and an inspiration.
It is a celebration. I think that's something for us to bear in mind about celebrating not just women's strengths, but also thinking about, because it reminds me of that Lois Wise, the American advertising executive, her famous words when she said, "Men are taught to apologise for their weaknesses, women for their strengths."
So true.
Isn't it just that you look back historically and you just think of women who've been strong, opinionated, educated, forthright, or somehow stood out, and somehow they've had to apologise for that. Yeah. So tonight we're going to kind of smash that out the window and do something else.
Yeah, and that reminds me actually of that quote. Who was it? Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, "Women are like tea bags. You don't know how strong they are until they're in hot water." And I think that's so incredibly accurate. I love it.
Nice. So that probably goes down well. Obviously, that's some time ago, but an idea of, like, in history, I guess, women's kind of strength and stoicism in times of adversity.
Yeah.
I'm reading a new book at the moment, which B. Huntley recommended to me. Bitch. Do you know it?
No, I've not heard of it.
Okay, so Bitch by Lucy Cook. Lucy Cook studied zoology at Oxford under Richard Dawkins. And what's so great about this book is it kind of debunks centuries of sexist myths by basically looking at the power game amongst the female of the species. Like, so for example, and so gender bias and those kind of things are absolutely smashed out the window, whether it's like the female lemurs in Madagascar, who both physically and politically dominate their male counterparts, or other examples from nature. But I do like the way she kind of applies that to human society too.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I need to read it.
Good, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, and so let's crack on.
Yeah.
And so for tonight's lineup.
Oh yeah, tonight's lineup. So we have up first Alice Mayer, who is the founder of We Built This City. Then we have Rebecca, who
from Ecozy Travel.
Oh, from Ecozy Travel. And we have Leah Wilkinson, a GB hockey team player.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us, guys. We're super excited that you are here. A reminder at home, guys, there will be a Q&A after our speakers tonight. So please do use the live chat forum. You know, that Q&A little symbol at the top with your question mark there on the Teams. Please don't send me through emails right now because I won't pick them up. Much better do it on the live chat forum. Somewhere out there in the ether, Polly Rumbold is looking after the chat forum. We'll be taking your questions. And do let us know who those questions are directed to, and we can invite the questions, ask the questions to the speakers later on. But now, without further ado, should we crack on?
Let's get started.
So, to our first speaker this evening, Alice Mayer is the founder of We Built This City. You may know the iconic shop in Carnaby Street. You may know the online platform. You may, like I, have things around your house from this amazing place. But Alice is here to tell you much more about collaboration, about artistry, about celebrating creativity, and about celebrating just what it means to be part of London's cool community. Welcome, Alice. Hello.
Hi.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay? Just to check first.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. And I'm just going to dive straight into the presentation and share this and make sure that's working. Right, can we all see a slide? Anyone?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Go ahead, Alice.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. So yeah, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me tonight on this, yeah, very, very important, vital day for women. Yeah, and it's always wonderful to be invited back by your school. I was at Surbiton in 2001. Sorry, I was the class of 2001, so I graduated in 2001 from the school. There is a photo of me and all of my friends in our grey uniform, which I noticed recently has been updated, so that shows you how old I am. And yeah, and I just I wanted to say actually that before I start this talk, Surbiton for me was a place, and I ideally hope it's still the same now, but a real place where ideas and creativity and opportunities were really, really championed. And we were all told that anything was possible. That's what I remember. My abiding memory is being told you could go out there and be anyone. And actually, no one really talked to me about being a mother or anything like that. It was all, if you want to be Prime Minister, you go for it. So that's kind of the spirit I took out of the school and went forward with. And tonight, I'd really like to talk to everyone about a little bit about my business that I've had for 7 years now. But actually, what I wanted to share was more around creative ideas and how we generate them and how we pull them down into reality, because this is something that I've throughout my career since leaving Surbiton have been able to do and to explore and to be interested in. So basically from Surbiton, I went to university, I did philosophy, and then I've done lots and lots of jobs ever since that have taken me down a very creative path. And I would say everything I've, looking back now, I didn't know this at the beginning, but looking back now, everything I've been doing has been about democratizing creativity and making it more accessible for people. And that all really culminated in 2014, which was, if everyone can cast their mind back to that point, it was just post the Olympics in London. So London was full of a lot of joy and optimism, a bit more than it is today. But I had an idea and it manifested into this business. And as Stuart said, it's called We Built This City. And the idea, so everybody knows before I start talking about how I came to this idea, is the idea of revolutionising souvenirs, but also supporting London creatives at the same time. So at the time after the Olympics, we had all these people rushing into London, but they were getting a bit lost and they weren't really making it out to the creative parts of London at the time. So I really was thinking around this time, can we get creators right into the heart of London and also save some of them from the regeneration that was going on, because a lot of them have studios in East London and they were being pushed out to places like Kent and places like that. So this was kind of bubbling in me in 2014, and I've had the business for 7 years, and I've had in that time 10, I think actually now 11 stores across London. Mainly we've had pretty much permanent stores on Carnaby Street the whole time. We did one at Christmas on Regent Street, if anyone popped in before the dreaded O word got us. But that was great, and we've picked up lots of accolades and awards over time, and most recently in 2019 and 20 with the third best shop in London, which was amazing, just after Liberty and Goodhood. And over that time, we've built a community of over 500 artists who all sell and showcase their work. And the idea of the shop was to really be more than just a transaction. So it was around holding events and workshops and really getting the artist community live, working in the store and meeting customers. And our customers were obviously tourists who were in love with London and having this great experience, but it was also locals as well. So it was this really wonderful community. And I never dreamt in a million years that this would be my business. And I certainly didn't think that we would take through the tills over 5 million and put a lot of that, most of that, back into the UK creative economy, because we effectively ran as a social enterprise. So that is a very, very short summary of We Built the City and what's kind of been achieved over that time. But what I wanted to talk about today is more of actually how we generate ideas and how we make them happen, because I feel like through We Built This City, the gift of the business was really has been the ability to experience building a company on my own. I didn't do it with a business partner, and the gift is really to experience that, but also now to reflect back on how did this come to be, because it happened to me quite quickly, and it was quite full on as an experience, and I had to grapple with the journey of entrepreneurialism very, very quickly, and I had to get into a state of leading something very, very quickly. And I think I've had to do a lot of reflection and, dare I say the word, processing of how all of this came to be, and how, and in a positive way, how if I can work out how this sort of happened, then I can keep working out how to create ideas and pull them down into reality. And hopefully I can share it and be useful to other people as well. So that's what I'd like to talk about tonight. And if anyone has any other questions about We Built City, please put them in the Q&A. I'm really happy to answer them later, because that's a whole other 7-year journey. But the first thing I wanted to say is in 2013, the year before I started the business, I knew that I wanted to start something by myself. So I'd worked for lots of companies and lots of other startups and lots of other entrepreneurs, and I just kind of hit a wall. I had a moment when I launched something for somebody, and the day after I felt really bereft. I felt like I was grieving and I didn't know why. And I suddenly had this moment of, oh gosh, it's my turn. I've got to go now. I've got to do it. Because I didn't want to put my energy anymore into other people's ideas. So I knew that it was my time to experience this, and I knew that I needed to create some space in which to do that. So I gave up my job, which is obviously a risk. I was about 30 at the time, didn't have any dependents, and I was in a privileged, fortunate position to be able to do that. I took on a bit of freelance work for a couple of days, but what I did, looking back now, is I created some space in which to allow this idea to come in, because I knew at this point I wanted a business, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the form or the shape was yet. And in a capitalist society where we're all basically earning a lot of the time and trying to earn to keep ourselves afloat, it's very counterintuitive to be in that zone of not being busy and not being active and trying to down tools, essentially. But I want to pick up on this first, because I think it's really, really important that when we're trying to generate a new idea, we create a kind of fertile environment around us for that thing to come in. And that normally means at some level clearing the decks, clearing the energy around us, and getting, having time for something to sort of bubble up, rather than being overwhelmed in other things. And that's obviously very hard sometimes. So I have it now where I know I need some space for new things to come in, and I can't give up my job because I made it my job. So I have to find other ways. And I use things like meditation of a day, just for like a couple of minutes, just to make sure that I'm giving myself the time to not be in the monkey mind, basically, and to sort of come down and tune in a bit more to my intuition, and to just allow the silence and the rest to sort of permeate a bit. And the other thing that I was doing back in 2013 was I created that space because I needed to explore, I needed to expand out. So I needed to go and meet people, I needed to go and see what other people were doing, I needed to go to conferences and networking events, and I did all of that, and I was journaling like a mad woman. But I just wanted to say that I think there's going to be 6 of these, and the first one is, this idea of making space, and it is counterintuitive in our culture, and it's kind of questioned quite a lot as well. So, but it's very important to do it. The second thing that I have worked out in this ideation process, and when we're waiting for something to land, is that we don't need to know the whats or the hows or any of that, but we do kind of need to know the whys. And as I said, my whys at the time, with that space that I'd created, became quite clear. And the first one was, I want to have my own business. I want to create my own, I want to have creative autonomy. I want to lead something. The second one was, I really want to stay in the industry I'm in. I want to keep helping creatives. I want to keep helping artists. I don't think I admitted it to myself at the time, but I wanted to lead a community in some way. And the third thing I was really clear on, and I woke up one night in the middle of the night and I just bolt upright. I was like, I want to be in a shop or I want to be basically not at a desk. I don't want to work in an office environment anymore. And I'd had a few experiences of volunteering and things like that with some events, and I'd really enjoyed actually being around the general public. And I know not a lot of people can say that, but I actually really, really enjoy it. And then those sort of three things started to form as my why. And I still didn't know what the idea was or what it would be or what shape it would be, but I really allowed myself to feel into that. And I think it's only something that can come from a feeling. You have to kind of get into the emotion of who you are to understand those things. So that is number two. I think it's really clear we get hold of the why, because also the why is going to be what holds that vision all the way through, as we then try and go through that, as we go through the ideas process. And then the third thing is we have to get really, really comfortable with the unknown. So this is quite uncomfortable for us as humans in 2022, I think. We've all had a bit of a crash course in it in terms of the pandemic. We now are in a situation where we don't always know. We've realised that we are kind of vulnerable to uncertainty quite a lot. I don't think we're supposed to know everything. I don't really think that's the point. But it is really uncomfortable and it's really anxiety inducing. And I found at this point that I had my whys and I had the time to do this thing, but it wasn't coming. And I was like, I just had so much confusion and I was really getting frustrated with myself. Because your brain also is there to keep yourself, safe. So your brain is constantly saying to you, come on, when's it going to come? When's it going to come? We need to make money here. We need to keep ourselves sane. We need to, do all these things. And also people are asking. So people are saying, what are you doing? What are you doing with your time off? So there's people asking, there's bank managers asking, there's you asking yourself. It can be a really, really challenging time to be in the unknown. The one thing that I would say is we have to be in the unknown if we're generating an idea. Otherwise, by virtue, we would have the idea. So we have to get comfortable in this space if we're going to be creative. This is the tortured artist state. This is the bit where the words are not coming, the painting is not coming, the business idea is not coming. But we have to kind of trust that moment in time is just as valuable as when the idea comes in, because it is part of the process. It is an ingredient that we need. And I think we just have to accept that it's okay. And if it's really uncomfortable, we can kind of create a structure around it, because that's what we used to. As we know, at school, everything is timetabled out, and university, everything is timetabled out. And most of us go into jobs where a boss is telling us to get in at 9 a.m. and is telling us what to do. So this is like, we have to really hold ourselves in this, because it's very new and it's something that we have to really, we have to really relearn and rewire ourselves around. So we have to accept that it's okay, give ourselves say to ourselves, okay, I'm giving myself 3 months of the unknown for this, and then I'm going to maybe go back to my old job. And I promise you it'll probably come in that time anyway. And then also, just remembering that it's a phase. So it's a really, really important phase. So at this point, I think I was about 6 months in, and I was really getting, hitting the head against the brick wall. And then light bulb moment. So I don't think I didn't give myself a structure, but it did come in. So I was on a bus one day, on the 19 bus, I remember, going through Holborn, and I looked out the window and I'd had all my whys sort of alive and around me and sort of, bubbling away. And then I saw a souvenir store and I looked in and I thought, gosh, that is all really bad. So it is cliched, it's really expensive, it's lots of plastic, it's not really made in the UK. And I felt really sorry for the tourists that I watched sort of wander in, because that really was the only thing back then that was available to them in terms of taking something really lovely away in London. So that was my light bulb moment. And then the strange thing is, this is a really exciting moment. This is like, all the fireworks going off. Wow, I've got it. And it aligns to what I want to do, and I can see it, and all these things are going on. But then it becomes also quite burdensome, because then we have to try and find a way to make it happen. And then all the question marks and all the self-doubt and all the practicalities come in, which was, for me, I don't know how I'm going to do a physical store in London because it's going to be too expensive. I didn't have any money sitting in savings at that point to launch it. I didn't have a team. I didn't even have a name at that point, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's a really exciting starter energy kind of time, but it's also really, really scary as well. And you suddenly feel a responsibility to the kind of consciousness of this idea, like you've got to find a way now to make this happen, but also you're battling on all fronts. So there are 3 things now, the other side of having your light bulb moment, that I wanted to just share. And I'm just going to check time because I know I talk far too much. Okay, so the next phase really is having, once the idea sort of comes to you, there's a really amazing quote by Elizabeth Gilbert in her book, which I actually have here, which I've just seen on the shelf, which is Big Magic, which is this idea that from the Greeks and the Romans, they believed that we weren't kind of born as creative geniuses, but creative genius came to visit us in our house, as it were. So their idea is that ideas are everywhere, ideas are floating above us in the collective, and sometimes they visit us, and sometimes we are able to pull them down and make them happen. And if we decide not to make them happen and pull them down, then they float off and other people take them. And it might explain why when I opened the first shop, lots of people came in and said, oh, I had this idea, which I'm sure they did, because it was a problem for a really long time in London to not have a solution to. But it's interesting how this idea probably visited millions of people. But I decided in that moment that I wanted it to be mine and I wanted to do something with it. So yeah, so there's this clarity in the idea, there's a belief and a trust, and you are going to have limiting beliefs at this point. You are going to have lots of, worries about the risk that this is going to be, the money that might get wasted, there's lots that comes in. But I think for me, I was so galvanized at this point, and I believed in it so much. And I didn't just believe in it for me, I believed that it would serve a lot of people and do lots and lots of good. And so I was willing to sort of I'd had a PR career, so I was quite good at pitching at this point. And I was like, right, I'm going to go and pitch this to as many people and just get this thing through. So at this point, I think it's really important to, once you've got that idea, to keep building it, keep visualizing. I was doing so much research. I was doing mad things like going to lurk in streets in London to try and find shops and to try and watch people go into shops and ask them questions. And anyway, so I was like trying to build my own conviction around this, and that's what we have to keep doing when we've got an idea that feels like it's the right one. And on pitching, it's a really interesting thing. I only had a logo at this point and then a name, and I think I'd registered it with Companies House. But what I was noticing is that in the pitches, people didn't seem to ask me the questions I thought they would. Landlords weren't asking me the difficult money questions. What they were doing is they were responding to the level of excitement and passion in me. And afterwards, I said to a couple of them, like, why did you take a risk on me? And they said, well, we love the idea, but also we could sense you were going to do it. We could sense that your energy was going to take it through, because nobody knows at that point. You don't know, they don't know, it's a big unknown. So it's good to remember that sometimes it's not really what you're saying, but it's how you're saying it. So and we all know that is that's something we see play out actually a lot with politicians and everything. A lot of the time they're not, no one's really checking the facts, but they're responding to this kind of energy that they're giving off. And then the final thing on this is just to identify those limiting beliefs and make sure that you have some ownership of them. So, you might be frightened of things. You're going to be frightened of things. That's fine. We just have to be aware of them and still do it anyway. And then the fifth thing is this idea of letting go of the how. So at this point, I was really, really now in my momentum, and I really wanted it to happen, and it still wasn't quite happening. And then somebody said to me, you need to just hold it a bit less. You need to hold it a bit less tightly. So go back into that ideation mode, go back into that playfulness and that space, and just trust that sometimes we can go out into the world and find solutions, but a lot of the time solutions are also trying to find us. And if we're just constantly pushing out, then those solutions can't find us, because we're sort of overwhelming ourselves. So we have to kind of sit back a little bit and trust that things are going to come our way. And they did. And a lot of people also said to me, don't tell anyone the idea, because everybody will go and do it. And I was thinking, if they go and do it, then it's not going to be the way I was going to do it. So I'm still going to do it. But also by telling people, I was helping this idea come to life. And I was also making lots of contacts. Lots of people were also gaining the belief around this idea that it should happen. So I stand by that. I never think you should keep your ideas secret. I think it's really good to share them. And also just in this letting go of the how. So I knew the whys and I knew the whats. I didn't quite know the how still, but I was holding on to the original vision. And then the final part was and is to take inspired action. So I was doing this weird thing. I was walking around London and I was, phoning numbers off of letting boards and all sorts of things. And in the end, I was led to a lady who looked after Carnaby Street, and she said to me, "I've heard your name so many times. You're just going to have to come in because it's annoying me." So I don't know how that happened. I think she must have got different things from different people, but something aligned, and I ended up being offered a shop that was 3,000 square foot over 2 floors in the middle of Carnaby Street, and they said to me, "Can you do it in the next 3 weeks?" And I just said yes, and then I thought I'll work it out later. But the inspired action was in the yes, but also things like, for example, I mean, there are lots of things that you can do and that are rational things to do, but there are also weird things that come along in this part. And basically, for example, one of them was I didn't have any money and somebody kept ringing me and saying, "Can we meet for coffee? Can we meet for coffee?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't have time. I'm trying to make this thing happen." And in the end, that person was the person who then offered me money to launch it, which I didn't have. So these inspired actions are the ones that will come knocking, and also that you will feel intuitively are the right thing to do. They don't always make sense, but they are normally the way forward. So I think my time is up, but I just wanted to say in summary, the 3 things for calling your idea in is make some space, allow yourself to expand, feel your way a little bit more than just using the mind, and like really allow your emotions to guide you a bit on throughout that time. Really get clear on your whys, because you're going to need to hold on to those throughout any kind of creative project. And try to become more comfortable with the unknown, because also I can tell you, when you start to be, well, depends what you're doing, but if you're an entrepreneur, you are in the unknown every single day of the week. And it is the thing I would say is probably responsible for, I think they say like 80% of new businesses go out of business in year 3. And it's because actually I got to year 3 and I was exhausted by the level of unknown. And I was exhausted by having to answer every question without knowing which way it was going to go. And it's it's tiring. So we have to find our own ways to get really comfortable in that space. And then once you have your idea, making it happen is really just belief and trust in your idea. No one is going to believe in your idea more than you. It's your baby. It literally is a baby. You have to love it and believe in it and be proud of it and trust it. And then you have to sometimes let go of the how. You don't always have the answer. That's what someone told me. You do not have the answer. Sometimes that answer is going to come to you instead through lots of different forms, people, things, signs in the road, so we have to just get into that slightly more surrendering space to allow things to flow, actually, because otherwise we're in a lot of resistance. And the final thing is, just take inspired action. So whatever feels good around your idea, just do it. And sometimes it won't make any sense, but it will lead you to a good place. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for letting me tell you those 6 things. And I'm really excited about the Q&A as well. Thank you.
Alice, thank you so much. I loved your presentation. It was fantastic. And I loved especially when you talked about having trust in your ideas. I do have a question for you. I'm going to be asking all the speakers this. Is there a woman that inspired you or you look up to? Why?
Great question. I have been really lucky ever since Surbiton to be surrounded by the most amazing women at school and university and my career. I've had a lot of people be amazing mentors and guides throughout my career. I'm actually going to say though tonight my mum, because I actually had a moment the other day where I really realised that she had me at 38, and I am 38 now, so maybe this is why it landed. But she took up the violin at 38 and is now a classical and jazz violinist. She also started a business when I was about 11, and it was an amazing patisserie kind of bakery thing that was way ahead of its time. And it didn't actually work out. She was only in it for a couple of years, but she took the risk, and she has always owned that. And I realised she's a big part of actually why I was able to also take a risk on my business. So yeah, and she's just the best PR person. She's now 77 and she's still gigging every night and telling everybody how to get, that she wants gigs. And yeah, they're still up in London every night. They're basically cooler than me and my parents, but yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Love that, Alice. Thank you so much. So much to think about. We'll come back with more questions, both more from us and from you guys later. So please do keep using that questions tab on the chat forum there, and we can pose more questions. Can't quite believe she did all that on her own.
Yeah.
But okay, and so to our next speaker.
Yeah. Up next we have Rebecca Thompson, who is not only an old girl of Standing High as well, but she's the CEO and founder of EcoC Travel, and I think it's great that she's taken two of her passions and carved a career out of it. I think that's really inspiring, very impressive.
Wonderful. So thank you for being here. Good evening, Rebecca.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'll just get my slides up. Oops. Right, can you see that all right?
Yep, perfect.
Great. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak at the event. Really great to be here for International Women's Day. I don't know if everyone knows this, but the theme this year is actually gender and sustainability. And sustainability is my passion. It's what I like to think I'm a bit of an expert in. So really, really great to be here. I'm part of this event, and hopefully getting some more of you inspired about sustainability. So I'm Rebecca Thompson. I'm the founder of EcoZ Travel, which is a very new, basically pre-launch company that does sustainable travel, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. So it is a tech for good startup, which essentially means that I'm creating a digital solution to try and do some good in the world. I'm a passionate environmentalist. It's what I've cared about the most, I think, since I was really young. I'm a keen traveller, and it's just really brilliant through this project and idea to be bringing those two things together. I've also very recently won a Young Innovators Award, which is actually, I mean, I think of it more as a grant than an award, but it's basically a programme run by Innovate UK. It's the government's innovation service in the UK. Does different types of grant funding. So it's really great to have that recognition for my business at this early stage, and be able to kind of put that towards giving me the freedom to really dedicate to this. So what is EcoZ Travel? Basically, what I'm creating is an online booking platform which will help people cut their carbon emissions when they travel. I'm trying to build a community around the idea of green travel and bring together kind of eco-conscious travellers who are all trying to travel in a way that doesn't have that negative impact on our planet. So what I'm creating, I'm actually doing a type of no-code web development. And I'm creating a booking site that could look a bit like Expedia, etc., but all green travel. and really with a kind of sideline idea of this to make green travel as accessible as possible as well. So what is a green holiday? Essentially, what we're looking at primarily here is the impact aviation has on carbon emissions. So of all of the different industries globally, travel is the only one that has not actually started coming down in terms of the kind of impact on climate change. So it's really all about how we can try and move away from flying where it's possible. Just, you know, it can be really small changes in behaviour from each of us. If we have one trip into Europe that instead we go by train, or picking a kind of sailing holiday, all these different things that you can think through, like how you can avoid flying, even staycations, doing camping holidays, all this kind of stuff. So that's what I'm trying to make available to people. And I think just kind of to talk a bit about my idea and how I got there. I basically love traveling. I've traveled a lot since I was very young. It's what my parents always loved doing when they could. So I have done a lot of traveling around the world and a lot of flying. And so when, you know, I do care so much about sustainability, it was that area of my own life that I was kind of ignoring a bit in terms of my climate and my carbon emissions. And so it's when I took the decision to really try and address that and cut back on flying myself, that I realised there's just nothing out there that does this, where you can just go to a site, book a holiday, and know that it's not got that negative impact on the environment, which in a great way was actually kind of amazing for me to see there's a complete gap in the market here, and it's something that I could actually do that I felt could actually, yeah, have a real impact on things. So just to give a couple of examples, the last kind of green getaway I did was going to the Channel Islands. So this was just a quick train down to Portsmouth and then a very long ferry across to Guernsey. I don't know if anyone who's watching has been to Guernsey or done a channel crossing by boat, but it's not the smoothest one. So the sort of freight ferries, which is what I was on, can take quite a while. But for me, I was essentially sat in a on-water cafe with access to great vegetarian food, and was actually just spending my day working remotely. So there are different ways that traveling green can really still fit into your life and work for you, even if it can take a bit longer. And then when I was there, I went to this glamping site, which you can see in the photo. It's one of the most beautiful setups that I've seen at these kind of glamping places. The nature that they'd put in place was amazing. And then also went to a brilliant hotel and spa that's very focused on sustainability. So there's just completely different places that you can go to, kind of crossing the whole spectrum of experiences. And then the next trip I'm going to give a bit of an insight into kind of Europe holidays you can do. My sister actually lives in Austria, so she moved there quite a while ago. And obviously not flying can make it a bit more challenging going to see her. But I'm going to be going there quite soon. And it's just a Eurostar across to Brussels, and they've recently introduced a sleeper train, so you can now travel directly from Brussels all the way to Vienna, which basically works as one of your nights in a hotel. The kind of cabin that I have is a bit like a hostel, but you can have all different types, airline seats or proper luxury style cabin to yourselves. So really great options you can do in green travel now. And what I'm trying to create is something where anyone can see what's available to them and how they can make that transition. So to talk a bit about how I got here, first of all, just had a brilliant experience at Surbiton, and it's so great to be coming back here to talk to all of you, and I hope that it's still what it was and still such a great experience. So I was there from year 7 up until 6th form. Sixth form, kind of for A levels, I took maths, physics, economics, history, which led me to doing economics and politics at Bath University. This was actually with a work placement, did that, and then ended up going back after university and working there for some time as a government economist. So that, again, I was driven to kind of follow that path for the same drive that makes me care so much about the planet. Really wanted to feel like I was making a difference and do something, I suppose, good. And I mean, I can really relate to what Alice was talking about in her career path, because when I got there, I was so motivated and excited, and after some time, I was really getting that sort of itchy feet feeling, wanting to do something different, not happy in an office job. And I don't think this happens to everyone either. It's not sort of like having that kind of job doesn't fit, but I think if you're an ideas person, and I think I've been coming up with some completely crazy ideas and some maybe feasible ideas since I was very young, I think that kind of office setup where you are just working for other people doesn't fit that well. So I realised that this kind of smooth career path that you can see on screen wasn't really working for me, and I needed to find something different that inspired me more. Yeah, I did feel like I had more of that creative autonomy, but I don't think at that stage I had the confidence yet to really just go out on my own and quit and not really know what I was doing, even though I knew I wanted to do something different. So I went off and did a master's degree. I went back to university because I think at the time it felt like that was a legitimate excuse to quit my job. And even though that's not the best rationale for going and doing a master's, it was one of the most incredible experiences. I studied at the School of Oriental and African Studies, which I can't recommend highly enough. It's such an amazing university, just surrounded by brilliant people, brilliant women, all just kind of having amazing discussions about ideas and ways to make the world better, and how the general consensus around how to make the world better is probably not right, and what can we do differently. And it was just such a creative environment for ideas and discussion. So even though the kind of motivation there wasn't perfect, it was such a brilliant experience. And I think the takeaway there is, as we're kind of moving through our career journeys, you do kind of move towards the kind of next best step, and you'll always be learning at all of these stages really vital skills that take you where you end up wanting to be anyway. And I think you learn even sort of things about yourself that kind of inform your eventual decision to really just follow that passion that you have and do something that you're really motivated about and does feel right. So once I finished my degree, I knew I wanted to do something different. I was looking to do something more practical, using all of these ideas and passions that I had. So I was kind of not ready to fully commit to that. I needed a job at the same time, so I was looking for something part-time, and again, it doesn't always work out how you want it to. So for about 6 months, I was looking for that part-time job, but eventually had to just go back to full-time work. So this is the stage where I had that idea for eCozy, but I couldn't take that forward how I wanted to at that time, because I did get that full-time job. And I loved that job. It was great. It was working in the climate space, doing something I was really passionate about, but I got that same feeling again of not being happy in an office job and not feeling like I had that creative autonomy. And so that's when I really just got the courage to quit. And finally I did it just over a year ago. And I really did take that space to stop. And after a long career, well, not long career, but you know, a good 10 years or so of kind of working really hard for other people, just taking that step back to think about what it really was that I was passionate about and what did drive me to you know, really do something different and find how I could turn those things into my work as well. And kind of in that process, I ended up circling back to my eCozy travel idea, which I'd started before, sort of in amidst other business ideas actually. And I just happened to apply with that to the Young Innovators Award, and the kind of recognition of getting that for this idea has kind of renewed that passion I had for the idea and really pushed me towards dedicating pretty much all of my time to it now. So it's kind of a jumbled journey to get there, and that can happen sometimes, but I'm in such a brilliant place now where I'm feeling so passionate about what I'm doing, and I think at the end of the day I hope that's what it's really about, is finding that thing that we're really passionate about and drives us to yeah, to get up and in the morning and have a great day each day. So yeah, that's just how I got there. And I quite like this sort of phrase. It's something I came across recently. There's a podcast all about this idea. But essentially it's really normal now not to just have this decide what you want to be when you're 18 or even younger possibly, and then do that job for 40 or so years. You know, I think understanding your career as a journey and a learning opportunity is the way to go, because it is this kind of path of discovery as you're learning about yourself and about your interests at each stage, and you're developing all those skills really in the workplace. I mean, school, of course, like the things I learned at school are kind of invaluable now, and same like learning the things that I was really interested in, but the things you learn at work and those transferable skills really feed into where you end up. So I'd really just say, you know, follow what really drives you with that, and it generally takes you to the right place. So yeah, just a bit about what's inspired me to get to where I am. Really that passion for the environment. Unfortunately, the urgency of the climate crisis, but I would say what's brilliant about being in the environmental space, the kind of climate activism space, is the people that you meet who are so passionate about this. It makes me so hopeful that, you know, it really is possible to make that real impact and prevent what could be fairly catastrophic, but it doesn't have to be. I think there's so much momentum around making a real difference here. So yeah, I mean, that's inspiring. It's inspiring meeting other entrepreneurs and hearing about their stories. And I think particularly thinking about it on International Women's Day, it is great to be working in tech as well, where it's very much not a sort of women dominated industry, and kind of feeling like you could be contributing to breaking some of those gender stereotypes. And when you kind of look for your inspiration as you're kind of making decisions about what universities you want to go to or what you want to do or be, I think feel that there actually is that room and that time to discover what that is. And at each stage, I think if you follow what you really care about, you'll be on the right path. And I think the more you can understand it as a journey, the better, because I think trying to enjoy that process makes it much easier, because it can be quite easy to focus a lot on where you want to get to in 5 years or when your business is going to be successful or finished or launched, and the steps up to that just being a bit kind of anxiety inducing. But it's really important to just enjoy that process as well, because it is a really creative process and you're putting so much hard work into it. So yeah, I think my time is up, but it's been brilliant being on here and talking to all of you about this.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you so much for telling us about your journey, about Ecozy Travel. We have lots more questions. I've got lots of things I'm keen to know about later on, especially about what more we can do for green and sustainable travel. I have to say I really identified as well with your idea about the squiggly career, as you call it. I like that phrase. Particularly, so I think, like as well, for a lot of our students and young people who get taught sort of or spoken to about careers that seem like as if that's a fixed thing. Like a career is something that's static, you know, you find it, you stop in it, and there's no changing it. Whereas like for someone like myself, who I think from 13 to 18, I was set on med school and that was it. And then at 18, I traveled the world, and that gap year became a couple of years, and that changed, and I did something else, and then I ended up being a chef and restaurateur before finally later in life coming back to be a teacher. So I like that squiggly career path, and I think there's something there for a lot of the young people out there now who might be thinking like, it's such a big decision and I don't know what to choose. It doesn't have to be for life. I think if you have 10 years in a career now, I think you can do really well. It doesn't have to be 50 years. Back to Rebecca later for more questions. Oh, but you've got a question first, Liv.
I've got a question. Like before, I'd love to ask if there was a certain woman in your life that inspired you.
I have to say, actually, my answer's the same as Alice. So, yeah, I mean, again,
you were inspired by Alice's mum.
Yeah, I mean, I've really been surrounded by brilliant women, I think, throughout my life. But yeah, but my mum, she worked in the UN. She sort of started out as a secretary. She did not have a squiggly career at all. She kind of worked there from, don't know exactly what age, but for 30 years, ended up working in a very good job by the end of it. And essentially, she was the one that worked while my dad stayed at home. And I think just was always a brilliant role model of what you can achieve as a woman. And yeah, I'd say my mum.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Rebecca. And so now, without further ado, let's go to our final speaker for this evening. Leah Wilkinson, a Team Wales hockey player, Team GB hockey player. She was in the Olympics last summer. She has reached the pinnacle of elite sporting achievement, and she is also preparing for the Commonwealth Games this summer. We are delighted that she's here with us this evening. Welcome. Good evening, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. What an absolutely inspirational evening so far. I feel a bit of pressure now because I'm only really talking about hockey. but I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. Right, I'll just share my screen and hopefully it'll work. Here we go. How's that? Are we good?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Always a positive start. So really, I just want to talk tonight about my hockey career, which has definitely been a bit of a roller coaster, I would say, with the pinnacle probably being, the Olympic Games last year. So this is me in the bottom left-hand corner. So there I'm 9 years old, and that's at the Atlanta Olympics. Always absolutely adored the Olympic Games, love everything sport. And that's me at the top at the Tokyo Olympics last year. So there I'm 33 then. So a bit of a comparison between the 9-year-old me in the corner. So when I like to kind of talk about my hockey career, I always like to explain it a little bit like a slinky. So the slinky for me has that ability and property to be able to bounce back, to expand, and then to kind of form its shape again. And I think very much that is what my career is like. It's been definitely challenging, but one I wouldn't change because of the lessons I've learned along the way, and kind of the resilience that I've been able to learn will be something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. So I always like to start with some probably embarrassing pictures. I'm pretty proud, not gonna lie, and probably one that I still wish I had now. I started playing hockey when I was 5. My family played, so therefore I just fell in love with the sport. I went every weekend to watch them, had a hit around, etc. And from kind of the age of 5, 6, I did loads of different sports, from horse riding to judo to football. Absolutely terrified of judo. As soon as you could like strangle someone and arm lock someone, I kind of, that was not really the sport for me anymore. And by the time I got to 15, it was very difficult to fit in all the different sports. And that's probably the first time I had to make almost quite a big decision, and that was to pick hockey as my only sport. And at that point I was playing quite high up football for Derby County, and had been relatively successful in some other sports. And then at sixth form, I went to Repton, so a pretty big hockey school in Derbyshire, as a scholar. I'd gone to state school before that, and that was really challenging as well, because I had been very much in my comfort zone, and going to this quite prestigious boarding school was really challenging, and it was quite hard to fit in at the beginning. But you know, really enjoyed my time there. And then as I was at Repton, so at the age of 17, I got my first cap for Wales. So I played my first senior game for Wales at 17. And by the time I was 18, I kind of had this bit of a swagger about me. I think there's very much part of me that almost thought, well, to be honest, I was just a bit cocky. Everything kind of had come relatively easy to me at that point. And then I went to Loughborough University to play hockey. So really, by the time I'm kind of in my 20s, early 20s, I was pretty successful. I'd had, you know, played quite a few games for Wales, and almost really very much was in my comfort zone. And that's a very dangerous place to be in any career, and especially in my sporting career. And I want to talk to you today really by talking about 3 Olympic Games, because I think that's a good way for you to be able to follow kind of my hockey journey. So starting in 2012, and 2012 was when I was my final year at university, and I'd come out of, well, for me that was an aspiration. I really wanted to go to the 2012 Olympics, but the issue was this: for the previous 5-6 years, I was that fish in that, you know, that big fish in that really little pond, and I hadn't pushed myself, I hadn't challenged myself, and I was very comfortable. And some of my teammates at Loughborough in the first year had moved to, there was one league above, and they had moved to play in the Premier League, and they had pushed themselves. And I hadn't. I'd very much stayed in this comfort zone, you know, surrounded by my friends, you know, people knew who I was around university. I was very comfortable. And like I say, for me, that was a really dangerous place, but not one I knew about at the age of 21. I just loved at that point, you know, feeling comfortable. And the 2012 Olympics came, and 2 of my teammates from Loughborough got picked for that Olympic Games. And I was sat on the sofa watching as Jess Ennis was incredible. And as that hockey team won the bronze medal, which was the first medal they won in so long. And that was the point, that was the spark that kind of thought to myself, if I want to go to Olympics, I need to give myself a bit of a kick up the bum, and I need to make some hard decisions. And this is where I had almost like this sliding door kind of choice of going down 2 different pathways. And the irony is, at this point, I'm also training now to be a teacher. And obviously, as you can imagine, that takes quite a lot of time. So before at Loughborough, I'd had all the time in the world, you know, going to a few lectures, spending most of the time, you know, having long lie-ins and training whenever I wanted. And like I said, the irony is when I finally really knew that that was what I really, truly wanted to achieve, and that it wasn't going to come easily, I was very busy, and that brought even more challenges and really tested my resilience and that ability to bounce back, because it's very difficult to fit everything in, all the training in, both mentally and physically. So the first big thing I did was I decided that I needed to move clubs. So at this point, I'm living in Bournemouth, and I was like, right, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it seriously. So I moved to Reading. So that's an hour and a half each way to get to Reading 3 times a week. But I knew it's where I needed to be. And at this point, Reading are the best team in the country. You know, you can probably see from the picture, you know, I'm not sure of your hockey knowledge, but there's some top quality players there. In the front row, 3rd from the right, is also Sam Quirk, if you want to have a bit of a look at our new Question of Sport host, a bit of a celebrity in her own right now, you know. And we had a fantastic team, and that was just what I needed, that spark of playing and surrounding myself with the best possible people I could. And again, it was a challenge. I had to step outside my comfort zone. You know, I very much used to playing every minute on the pitch and not having to try that hard to get selected. And this was a totally different experience, but one that made me see what I needed to do to be able to get to the top level and surround myself with people that already played for Great Britain or for their home nation. So the next Olympic Games, Rio. So this was the one that was really realistic for me to achieve. I would have been in my prime. And, you know, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of how the GB team got on at Rio, and I'll touch upon that later. So this was the one, this was the games I was targeting. So some of these pictures, I'm really sorry, the bottom right one, I'm not going to lie, is a little bit gross. I have been injured quite a lot playing hockey, and the irony is that I sit here on this sofa in a boot, having broken my foot last night at hockey training. So, you know, I get injured quite a fair bit, but never actually injuries that have kept me out that long. So the left one, you know, I got hit at the Commonwealth Games at the Gold Coast, a few stitches, played the next day. Middle one, more stitches, look a little bit like Harry Potter now though, so it's pretty cool. And actually, funny enough, the middle one at the top, I've even got used to doing my own stitches, so I went and cleaned that up and played in the second half. So hockey is quite a hardcore sport. The bottom right one always makes me feel a bit sick because my finger actually popped, which was pretty grim. But yeah, injuries have always, I had, you know, small incidents, but never anything that kept me out for quite a long time. And Rio, those few years were the hardest years in my sport that there was. I had wanted to play for Great Britain since I was probably about 10, 11. It was always my inspiration. I don't know if anybody knows, but basically you play for a home nation, so you play for Scotland, Wales or England, and then you can also play for Great Britain, and that's really only at the Olympics. I'll turn this off for a moment just in case it's any of you having your dinner at that point. And it'd always been my inspiration. And coming out of Loughborough, there'd been chat to me having GB trials. and nothing came. I didn't have a trial. I didn't really understand why. And that obviously led to me having that path towards moving to Reading and training harder, because I knew that I didn't want to have regrets. So I moved and I trained harder, but the trial still didn't come. And then in 2014, I get a call from the GB coach offering me a trial. And it was an incredible feeling, because I'd honestly been waiting 5-6 years at that point. I'd been to Commonwealth Games, I'd played over 50 times for Wales, and I had been awarded with this trial for all the kind of decisions and hardships that I'd put myself through. And I never like to call them sacrifices, because actually it's not a sacrifice to play international sport at any level. It just means you lose a few lions in the morning. So the trial comes and I'm ready to go on a Monday, and that weekend I break my wrist playing for my club team, and I had to call up the coach, absolutely devastated, and say, I'm really sorry, I can't come. And he was actually really amazing about it and said, you know, give me a call when you're back ready. So 2 months later, I'm playing indoor hockey, which I absolutely adore, really, really fast and furious. And I am not kidding when I say the last ball of that tournament, I break my thumb. So I'm there again, calling the coach, having to explain that I broke my thumb, and it's now 2015. So the games is just over a year away. So I have to call the coach and explain the situation. And again, take in mind that I've tried for years to get to this point. And I call him up and he says, you know, you have to come. If you want to have a chance, you have to come. It's less than a year. Well, sorry, just over a year to go. So I turn up to the trial and it's really cold. It's freezing, and anybody's broken a bone or got an injury, it's even more challenging to play in the cold. And I remember I'm warming up, and I've been there 5-10 minutes, and I just start to cry. And I realised at that point that I couldn't do it. I couldn't even hold my stick, let alone trial for Great Britain. And I literally have to go up, pack up my stuff and leave. And I remember calling a coach, you know, a few hours later, and him saying, I'm so sorry, it's too late. And that was my games. That was the one I really, really wanted to go to. That was the one, like I say, was my prime age, and the one I'd been trying for those few years after making such hard decisions to get picked. And it was just through stupid, awful injuries that was just so frustrating. And I think what was probably most difficult, and this is probably an awful thing to say, is that at that games, they won the Olympic gold medal. And part of me was absolutely delighted. Obviously, you know, my friends were in that team. It's Great Britain, absolutely thrilled. But part of me felt so physically sick that I had, you know, tried that hard to play and had been injured. So therefore couldn't go to the games. And don't get me wrong, I don't know if I would have even got picked in the end, etc. But I think it was always that what if, you know, I wasn't really sure in the end. I'll just skip through the horrible pictures again. So here we go. So Tokyo. So this is the final opportunity to go to Olympics. You know, I'm late 20s here. Hockey's pretty demanding. And I get a call to go for a trial. After every Olympic Games, people retire and there's always a trial. And this time the trial was not for me. It was over 30 athletes going for this trial. And I go to the trial, and guess what? No, I am not injured. I don't get picked. So I'd been trying for all those years, finally was fit, good to go, trialed for 3 weeks and didn't get a full-time contract and didn't get selected. And that was really devastating because, you know, all the time I kind of looked at injuries and looked at different reasons why I didn't get picked. And this time, actually, it was just genuine ability that they didn't want me, you know, to be part of the squad. And a lot of it was to do with age profile. You know, they said I'd be over 30 by the time I played, and that I didn't kind of fit that profile. And for the next kind of couple of weeks, well, more than that, a couple of months, absolutely devastated. And I had to step back and almost think about that slinking, that ability to to kind of recoil and come back. And actually I was able to step back and really reflect on what I had achieved. You know, so I'd been to, this was my 3rd Commonwealth Games at the Gold Coast. I was captain of the Welsh team. I got to play in front of the likes of the Queen, travel the world, the top right there. I became the most capped Welsh player of all time in all sports, and still am now. You know, and those records mean a lot to me. And that reflection, that ability to step back was really good for me. Because sometimes you don't achieve your goals and you don't get what you want, definitely not instantly, but actually sometimes you just need to step back and think, what have I achieved? And by being able to do that, all the weight came off me, and actually I played better than I ever had, even in my early 30s, because I had no pressure. I never thought I was going to play for GB, and I took all that pressure off myself. So hockey is one of those sports where I think situations change, and there was a new coach that came in and started 2019, and people have different perspectives, etc. And on the 1st of October 2019, I got my first cap for Great Britain. At this point, I'm 32 years old, and it was an unbelievable experience. It was at Bisham Abbey, which is our training place in Marlow, so not far from where we are now, and it could have been anywhere in the world. To play in front of my family and friends was absolutely incredible. And then obviously it can never be that smooth. There has to be a few more bumps, and along came COVID, and I had taken a sabbatical off work. So I'm a teacher just down the road from you guys at Newcastle, and I'd taken a sabbatical for 6 months. I thought, you know what, my body's going to deal with this for 6 months. I can do it. I can train full time. And COVID hit, and it was so difficult, because I literally went from having my dream of being this full-time athlete to, you know, training in isolation in bubbles, having to train by myself, and also not playing for GB when I finally was kind of good enough in the eyes of the people selecting. I wasn't able to play. But luckily, for 18 months, I stayed fit, you might not believe. And, you know, I was able to get to this place. And I was picked for the Tokyo Games, which was just the most unbelievable experience, having kind of been on this roller coaster for so long and genuinely not thinking I was ever going to achieve it. And it was just the most unbelievable experience, Tokyo. And yeah, people asked what it was like with COVID, etc. And yeah, it was hard. You know, we had to spit into a tube every day to be COVID tested, and we were petrified that we were going to get COVID and fly home. And we had to eat between plastic, you know, like almost plastic containers we had to eat in, and we had to wear a mask literally full time. It was hard, but unbelievable. And an experience that I will never forget. And I think it was probably made even better by winning this medal. And it's something that I think that as a team, we probably didn't think we were going to achieve. We hadn't had the best kind of 6 months before that. But we played so well and trained so hard that in the end, we won a medal. And it was literally the cherry on top of my career. And, you know, I'm so proud of everyone that's involved in that team, because it was such a team effort against the odds with COVID. You know, that was so hard, but we got there and we achieved it. So I think for me, just going back to this idea of a slinky, for me, it's not the adversity. We will all face adversity. Sorry, my dog's just jumped on me. We will all face adversity, but I think it's how we kind of stand up to that and how we react. And for me, a slinky just epitomises my career and everything that I've kind of gone through. And I really want to say to everyone that you will all have difficult times and you will all have hardships. Some of us are more resilient than others, but we will have challenges. And like I say, the most important thing is that we don't lose track of what we want to achieve, and we have that ability to bounce back. So thank you very much. Hopefully I didn't go on too much or overrun too much.
Leah, thank you so much. I want to say that I really like to talk about putting yourself out of your comfort zone, and how like it can really pay off, and the consistency with everything. I really loved it. And you know what's coming. I'm going to ask you the question. I'd love to know if there was a woman that inspired you specifically in your life.
I think the funny thing is, I really hope my mum's not watching, because she would be really, really offended at this point. So, to be honest, my mum is actually inspirational to me, absolutely. But as somebody that is a historian as my job, and I did a master's on the suffragettes, I think for me on a day of International Women's Day, mine would be probably the Pankhursts as a family, really. I think that idea of fighting for women's votes and for stepping up, and the things that they did for the rights of women, I think is unbelievable, and one that we can all learn from. So as a historian, I've probably gone down that side of things instead. So yeah, probably Emmeline Pankhurst, and not forgetting her daughters as well. So yeah, that's mine.
Amazing, thank you so much.
Thanks, Leah. That was incredible. Wonderful to hear your story. What an incredible journey, and we'll come back to some more questions with that in a moment. So that takes us on nicely to let's have a little Q&A, shall we? So I know we've had some questions coming in from home, and let's just hand over to Polly. You're out there in the ether. Polly, what questions do we have for our speakers this evening?
Oh, good evening. And firstly, I just want to say thank you so much to all our speakers. You are all inspirational. I get so excited when I hear old girls coming back and talking about their journeys. Thank you so much. I love it, and I do hope loads of people will be listening and watching your stories, because you know, listening to your passion about what you do, and you know, when you leave school, your career is not set in stone. You don't know where your journey is going to take you, and that is such an important story. I've had a crazy journey through my life as well since I left Surbiton High School many years ago, so thank you so much. Anyway, on to the questions. First question for Alice. You talked a lot about your energy and passion. Do you think that is a prerequisite for starting a business, or can it be confected?
Sorry, what was the last word? Can it be?
Confected.
Confected. Oh, good word. I'm going to say that it is pretty vital, just because I think that it gets very hard very quickly, and it's not. I think there's a lot of glamour kind of around this idea of being an entrepreneur, and something that you see on Instagram a lot, and people sort of living their high life being entrepreneurs. But my experience has been, you know, some pretty grueling days, especially in a business where you're running a shop or a physical entity. It's a lot of like actual physical labor. I couldn't actually get over how much more I was moving my body after having a desk job. And I just think that when it gets tough, the energy and the passion is the thing that is going to get you through, and it's the thing that's going to keep you really the vision keeper of the idea, and the thing that's going to keep you really committed to it. And I would say that the whole point of being here in this wonderful world is to also feel the energy and feel the passion and feel joy. And if you're not feeling it in your business, there's probably another idea that will give you that, and that's the best gift that you can have in your life, if you can kind of chase it down and experience it. And yeah, so I think it keeps you very focused on the business, and it will give you the momentum and the fuel to carry that journey on for as long as obviously you want it to. But there does need to be those moments of real energy, passion and joy, I think.
Just adding to that, Alice, what do you think schools can do to help promote this sort of entrepreneurship in young people, you know, to develop their enthusiasm and passion about you know, what they want to achieve?
Yeah, I actually at Surbiton did the Young Enterprise Scheme, and I was co-MD, obviously showing some sort of drive to do it back then. I think that scheme was amazing, and we actually put on parties for people under the age of 15, I think, and we put parties on in venues, so I got to learn how to book venues and understood health and safety, and I mean I was learning it all at Surbiton. So but I think Yeah, I think the other thing that could probably be done is also just to really bring entrepreneurs in to maybe tell their stories and actually the reality of it. I don't think that I know that some people become entrepreneurs quite young, but I do also really recommend that there is a period of time where maybe you go and work for other people. You know, you get paid in that scenario to essentially watch other people make mistakes. You get to learn. I did a lot of work experience at Surbiton as well. And I got to get, you know, that view already at that point. But then I also did that when I actually left university. I just did 18 months of just literally working in everything I was interested in to try and distill down what I wanted to do. And I still wasn't ready then. I still needed to go and really understand how things worked and how to win business and how to pitch and all those things, all those tools. So but I think the more of those that you can do in school, and actually particularly also around this ideation phase, you know, of like what ideas actually work in the world, how do we make them into reality, and really focusing on that bit, I think is another sort of tool set, I guess, to bring into schools, I think.
Well, I can confirm that your Young Enterprise is still very much part of Surbiton, as is the fact that, you know, we are still a creative hub, so you'll be pleased to know that. Anyway, thank you so much, Alice. Rebecca, moving on, what's the one change you would make to encourage us, or what's the one change you would encourage us to make about the way we travel to be more sustainable?
It's unfortunately a bit of a straightforward one. It is avoiding flying wherever you can. That's the thing in travel that has the biggest carbon impact. But I think, you know, it's really about doing what each of us can. You know, it doesn't have to be a sort of, you know, blanket ban on all travel for yourself, on all flights for yourself, if that doesn't feel achievable. It's what does feel achievable for you. So, you know, if you're going on a sort of city break in Europe and, you know, you'd normally fly, maybe that's one where you can take the train. Or yeah, there's lots of different things, but I think it can be those small changes that start things off anyway.
Thank you very much. And over to Leah. I love your image that's slinky and your bounce back ability, fantastic. And your journey has been amazing. What do you think we can do to instill that level of bounce back ability in our young people?
That's a really good question. I think that we are challenged and tested all the time. And I think that's just it, really, challenging our young people, putting them outside their boundaries, making sure that we're always kind of tested, because actually resilience is very much in my opinion, a learned skill. Some people are obviously born with it, but you know, let's be honest, most of it's learned through life, and life's hard at some points. And I think it is just being challenged and making sure as teachers or in school that we challenge our students that may be in the classroom, outside the classroom, and making sure that no one's kind of just smoothly kind of moving along, you know. And also I think drawing attention to the importance of our mental health and the importance of being resilient people, you know, mental health and being able to talk about how we feel and things like that also will massively help.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to say thank you again once to all of you, but also to pass you back over to Stu, because I'm sure you've got some questions over there as well.
Thanks very much, Polly. Yes, and just picking up that, Rebecca, I'll come to you first if I may. I like your idea that you're thinking about building a community of eco-conscious travellers, and I think just reflecting on the last 2 years, of course, we've all seen the differences that a massive reduction in flying and travel generally has had on our air pollution and the quality of the environment around the planet. So it seems to me this is a massively important thing, but something very much of a zeitgeist here that I think you've hit upon, and make that community. And I guess, what is my question? That's what I'm just gibbering at the moment, but I'm thinking my question is something like, how do we how do we change from being people who are eco-conscious but passive into actually changing what we do? That's a massive question that I don't expect you to answer in terms of how we're going to change the world. But how do you see this going?
I think it's a really good point. I think it's now very much kind of in mainstream discussion that, you know, we absolutely have to do something about climate change. People know about it, but it is sort of moving from that sort of knowing you want to do something and actually doing it. I suppose everyone's got really busy lives. There's lots of different causes that different people are passionate about. So it's seeing how you can fit it into your life. And I suppose like half the idea with eco-zy travel is that at the moment, it's not that easy to travel sustainably. There's not just this kind of couple of clicks away and you've booked your green holiday. You've got to do quite a bit of research and book through lots of different places, and it takes time. So I think there is something really about solutions coming up that make it just as easy to be green as not be green, because it's when there's quite a burden on people to make those green decisions that it kind of gets too much, because there's so many different places. There's travel, but you know, every aspect of our life, we're in a society that's based on kind of fossil energy and plastics and all these different things that it's very hard to avoid. So it's how you can make that as easy as possible for everyone.
And that's coming soon, isn't it? In fact, how soon? When will eco-zy launch?
So there's already a website where you can sign up, but be kind of launching the first stage of things in May in the Sustainable Transport Week.
Fantastic. And one last question for you, Rebecca. I wonder, what do you think is the larger premium that people are concerned with? Is there a green premium on price that's the bigger concern, or do you think it's on time? By like, if we have to travel by train, for example, or sailboat, which sounds quite romantic and beautiful to me, but obviously it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because quite a bit of the green travel movement is marketing itself as slow travel, which I think for some people works fine, but for other people that's not really a selling point. So there definitely is something there around how you kind of convey that sort of magical, nostalgic, romantic experience of traveling by sailboat or train, and that becoming part of the holiday, because at the moment it definitely could be a barrier to people. I think things like remote working are really helping that. Kind of digital nomad, being able to work anywhere, even on a train, opens it up a lot. But as well, you're kind of competing, unfortunately, with budget airlines that are able to market themselves as £12 to go to Vienna, when, you know, it's far more expensive to travel by train. There is a real premium there. So it kind of does push it into that space of really dedicated people who are willing to put the money behind it for themselves. So it depends. It's kind of who it's accessible to at this stage, because obviously on a price point, you know, that means it's something that only a certain portion of society can maybe do when they can, but there's also staycations, so it all depends. It's kind of a mixed bag. Different people will be able to do different things, so there's definitely cheaper options as well when it comes to green travel.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks very much. Liv, I think you had a question.
Yes, I wanted to ask Leah a question. You mentioned that you were a teacher as well, and I was just wondering how you find the balance between being a teacher and playing hockey.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think By getting up really early. That's the honest truth. I think that it's just about being dedicated to what you want to achieve, and for me it genuinely is getting up and often running on the school field literally, and then going shower, you know, and then going to work. And I think it is things like that, being able to willing to train late at night and then getting up the next day. And you know, I was fortunate with GB that was funded by UK Sport, so playing for GB was my full-time job, whereas playing for Wales is amateur. So yeah, it literally is early mornings, and I think being dedicated, like I say, to what you want to achieve, because if you're passionate about it, you know, and I think Alice spoke about that earlier, if you're passionate about it, you'll do it, you'll put the hard work in because it's what you want to do.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant. I think we'll leave our questions there. That we've got so many more we could ask, but thank you so much to our speakers. If there's one thing that I think, or a couple of things that struck me this evening listening to our lineup, I think one, there has certainly been that there's been an ambition and a drive and a courage that has gone with the decisions and the journeys that have gone on, whether it's with Alice and We Built This City, or Rebecca likewise leaving her job to pursue a passion, and Leah and just that sense of determination and resilience and courage to keep going and never say no and never giving up, which I think has been incredible. I think there's also something there about enjoying that journey as well, and Alice talking about sort of allowing yourself to sort of be comfortable in the unknown, and lots talking about putting yourself out of that comfort zone. The comfort zone could be a dangerous place, and actually maybe that's somewhere we should push ourselves out of more readily.
Yeah, and you know what they say about, it's all about the journey, you know, getting there. Exactly
right. So thank you to our inspirational lineup this evening. And as Marilyn Monroe once said, women who seek to be equal with men just lack ambition. So thank you to Leah, to Alice, to Rebecca. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Then we'll see you at Pop Talks again in May. Good evening.